The coal smoke by the train tracks caught in her throat, making it tight. Her ears were filled with the noisy farewells of the young volunteers heading to the countryside. Sarah snapped back to reality, her fingertips still clutching a washed-out, coarse cloth handkerchief. Her gaze fell on the person standing in front of her. It was Liam, wearing a half-worn blue work uniform, with a canvas backpack slung across his shoulder. His features were handsome, the kind praised by everyone on their street, and right now, his eyes held a hint of reluctance as he looked at her earnestly. Sarah clearly realized that she had returned to this very day in 1979, waiting for the train to leave for the countryside. In her past life, on this exact day, she had stood in this spot, her eyes red from crying, clutching his sleeve and promising over and over that she would stay home and wait for him. She had promised to take care of his frail mother, do the laundry and cooking, fetch water and farm the land, taking on all the chores in his household, and she had done it for 5 whole years. He had lived freely in the countryside, occasionally sending back a few weightless letters or some worthless wild berries, and she had gladly accepted it, dropping her own family's chores to run to his house. 5 years later, when he returned to the city, he immediately hooked up with a government official's daughter. With a casual remark that years of waiting meant nothing, he erased all her years of unpaid sacrifice. She ended up with nothing, having wasted the best years of her life. Ever been taken for granted? Watch how Sarah stops waiting on empty promises, takes control, and builds an amazing, independent life for herself. Let's dive in. Now, standing on the train platform once again, hearing him say the exact same words as back then, Sarah's heart felt nothing but a chilling coldness. There wasn't the slightest flutter of affection left. "I'm leaving. Going to the countryside will take at least 2 or 3 years," Liam said, his tone certain, as if he firmly believed she would nod and agree. "Wait for me patiently at home. My mom is frail, so please help out more with the farm work and mending. When I get back, we'll get engaged." His words naturally pushed his family's chores onto her, entirely oblivious to how inappropriate his requests were. Around them, a few other youths heading to the countryside turned to look. Someone teased them about their deep childhood sweetheart bond, saying Liam was lucky to have such a caring and reliable girl waiting for him at home. If it were the past, Sarah would have blushed deeply and happily accepted all his requests, but now she simply lowered her eyes and gave a slight nod. Her face showed no genuine emotion. It was so perfunctory that even she could notice. "Yeah, I know, just those few short words. No reluctance, no asking when he would return, and certainly no volunteering to take care of his household affairs." Liam froze for a moment, seemingly not expecting her to be so cold. His brows furrowed slightly. "Just that? You're not going to say anything else to me?" Sarah raised her eyes and glanced at the green train blowing its whistle in the distance. The doors were already open, and the youths were lining up to board. There was no time to argue with him. If she tore into him right here, the surrounding neighbors and youths would watch, and gossip would spread through the entire neighborhood, bringing endless trouble later. Feigning compliance to make a clean getaway was the safest approach for now. "The train is about to leave," she said, her tone flat. "You should get on, don't miss it. Take care of yourself out there." She didn't step forward, nor did she hand over the prepared bundle of dry rations like she had in her past life. That bundle contained the cornbread she had stayed up late steaming and the outdoor gear she had sewn. In her past life, she had shoved it all into his hands, but this time, she had hidden it at home early in the morning, not willing to give him a single crumb. Liam wanted to say something more, but the conductor walked onto the platform blowing a whistle, urging everyone to board. He had no choice but to lift his backpack. Before leaving, he reminded her one last time, "I'm leaving the house in your hands. Make sure you go over and check on my mom often." Sarah simply gave a faint wave, her gaze falling on the train car behind him, waiting for the exact moment he turned and stepped onto the stairs of the train. Sarah didn't linger for even half a second. She immediately turned around, pushed her way through the watching crowd, and jogged briskly toward the train station exit. Faintly, from behind, she could hear him calling her name, but she turned a deaf ear to it, her footsteps growing faster and faster. A free nanny, she would never be that again in this lifetime. In the past, she had exhausted her youth, energy, and heart on Liam's family, only to receive betrayal and abandonment in return. In this life, she would absolutely not repeat the same mistakes. Rather than wasting herself revolving around a man who didn't have her in his heart, it was better to keep all her time in her own hands. She would learn a trade, save up money, and live a life that truly belonged only to her. Running out of the train station, she saw the streets outside, bustling with people. Old-fashioned 1970s single-story houses lined the street, and the sign for the roadside public transit station was clear and eye-catching. The familiar scene made her even more certain that her rebirth had truly happened. She walked quickly all the way home. Pushing open the gate to their yard, she saw her mother, Martha, scrubbing clothes in the courtyard. Seeing Sarah return alone, Martha was instantly confused. She looked up, peering behind her daughter. "Where's Liam? Has the train left already? Why didn't you stay and talk with him a bit longer? He specifically asked you to take care of his mother before he left, so you can't be careless about this." Her mother had always believed since they were little that Liam had a bright future and was dead set on matching them up, constantly urging her to visit his house more often to bring them closer. In her past life, Sarah had listened to her mother's words, spending day after day at his house, only to end up with nothing in the end. Sarah walked over to her, crouched down to help wring out the clothes, and spoke with a calm but firm tone. "Mom, I won't be running over to Liam's house all the time anymore. Every family has their own chores. His mother has her own relatives to take care of her. It's not my place to go over there every day and do their work." Martha's hands paused, and she looked at Sarah in bewilderment. "What nonsense are you talking about, child? You two grew up together. Liam entrusted his home to you. How can you just wash your hands of it? When he comes back from the countryside, you two are going to get married. Whether we get married in the future or not is still up in the air. I don't want to tie myself down to another family's petty chores so early on." Sarah didn't argue heatedly with her mother. She just slowly made her intentions clear. "I plan to sign up for the sewing class in town to learn how to make clothes. I'm going to earn my own money in the future and not rely on anyone else." Martha immediately retorted, merely thinking that Sarah was throwing a temporary tantrum. "Learning to sew is so much hard work. As a girl, it's enough to just obediently wait for your fiancé to come back and marry him. Why go through all that trouble?" Sarah didn't argue back, as her mind was already made up. No matter how much her mother tried to persuade her, she would never go down the same old path of her past life. Returning to her own small room, she looked at the wooden chest holding all the things she had given Liam over the years, or items related to him. Hand-embroidered handkerchiefs, a fountain pen she had saved up for, and a glass jar left over from picking wild berries together. She dug them all out, carried them out to the firewood pile in the yard, and burned them clean with a single fire. As the flames licked at those old items bearing the grievances of her past life, she stood to the side. There was not a shred of reluctance in her heart. She only felt entirely relieved. From today on, the Sarah who revolved around Liam and worked hard without complaint was completely gone. In the days to come, she would only live for herself. The embers of the firewood pile were still emitting a faint white smoke. Seeing Sarah burn an entire chest of things related to Liam, Martha slammed her washing paddle onto the stone slab. She walked briskly up to her, her face darkening severely. "Sarah, what exactly is wrong with you today? You spoke coldly to Liam at the train station, and then you came home and burned all these things. Are you planning to make a clean break with him?" Martha's tone was full of disbelief. In her traditional mindset, Sarah and Liam were the default couple acknowledged by everyone in the neighborhood. They were childhood sweethearts. The young man going to the countryside had a bright future, so it was only natural and proper for Sarah to wait patiently and take care of his family. Now that Sarah was acting so unusually, Martha merely assumed she was throwing a petty tantrum. Sarah kicked the remaining ashes at her feet, her expression calm, not backing down an inch. "Mom, I'm not throwing a tantrum. I've thought it through. I can't be trapped working in someone else's house for the rest of my life, wasting my own potential." "What do you mean, wasting your potential?" Martha raised her voice and reached out to grab Sarah's arm. "Liam entrusted his mother to you before he left because he values you in his heart. When he returns to the city from the countryside in 2 or 3 years and gets assigned a formal job, he will marry you with honor, and our family will look respectable, too. If you distance yourself from his family now, others will only say you are heartless. Who else would dare to treat you well in the future?" Neighborhood gossip and a respectable marriage were the two things her mother constantly talked about. In her past life, Sarah had been bound hand and foot by this exact rhetoric. Every day before dawn, she would head over to his house to fetch water and chop wood, taking care of all the cooking and laundry, while neglecting the farm work for her own parents. In the end, all she got in return was being told she lacked a sense of boundaries. Sarah gently shook off her mother's hand and reasoned with her clearly. "Liam's mother has a younger sister living in the next village who comes to visit every few days. The heavy and light chores in their house should naturally be handled by her own relatives. I'm just a neighbor. I have no obligation to go over and serve them every day. Besides, I want to learn how to sew. If I have a skill in my hands, whether I get married or live on my own in the future, I'll have the ability to support myself. That's much more reliable than blindly waiting for someone else." Nearby, Sarah's father, Robert, who was smoking a dry tobacco pipe, set it down. After a long silence, he finally spoke up. "It's not a bad thing for the girl to want to learn a skill. But there still needs to be an explanation for Liam. Don't be too harsh about it, or people will gossip. Her father had a mild temper, not as forceful as her mother, but deep down, he also felt that Sarah shouldn't push Liam away completely. Sarah understood that it would be hard to change her parents' minds right away. She didn't argue fiercely, but simply softened her tone and agreed. I won't actively fall out with Liam's family. I just won't be at their beck and call like before, managing their household affairs day and night. As for learning to sew, I've already asked around. The sewing class taught by Grace Jenkins in town only costs $5 for tuition and lasts for 3 months. Once I finish learning, I can take on clothing orders from the neighbors and save up a decent amount of pocket money every month. $5 was not a small sum in 1979. It was more than half a month's living expenses for the family. Martha immediately furrowed her brows tightly upon hearing the number. So expensive! Spending this money to go out and learn a skill is a pure waste. It's better to save the money for when you and Liam get married in the future. Money spent on oneself is never a waste, Sarah replied, her attitude firm. She turned around and went back into her room, digging out a small cloth bag she had hidden under her bedboards. Inside was the secret stash of money she had saved up over time by collecting scraps and stitching shoe soles for others. She counted it carefully, penny by penny, and it was exactly enough for the tuition. I don't need family money for the tuition. My own savings are enough. You don't need to worry about it. Martha looked at the neatly bundled change in Sarah's hands, speechless for a moment, but she still didn't approve of Sarah's choice. She spent all day at home, dropping hints and trying to persuade her, bringing up Liam's family's difficulties from time to time, hinting for her to find time to go over and lend a hand. Early the next morning, the neighbor lady from next door to Liam's house specifically came knocking. She said that Liam's mother had been complaining yesterday that her water vat was empty and the firewood hadn't been chopped, hoping Sarah would go over and help out. In the past, upon hearing this, Sarah would have immediately dropped everything in her hands and rushed over to Liam's house. But today, holding a fabric cutting pattern in her hands, she didn't even lift her head. "Ma'am, I have to go to town today to ask about the sewing classes. I really can't spare the time. If you have a moment, please help out Liam's mother more, or just ask her sister to come over." The smile on the neighbor lady's face faded a bit, and her words carried a hint of reproach. "Sarah, Liam reminded you countless times before he left to take care of his home. Now you're making excuses. When he comes back from the countryside and finds out, he's going to be very upset. He has his family, and I have my own things to do. They can't rely on me for everything," Sarah replied. Her tone was polite, but she showed no intention of giving in. "From now on, there's no need to come to me for the chores at their house." Having hit a wall, the neighbor lady left in a huff. Within half a day, gossip had spread through the streets and alleys. Everyone was saying that Sarah had a change of heart and was fickle. The moment the young man left, she was unwilling to keep her promise and refused to take care of her fiancé's mother. The gossip reached Martha's ears, making her so anxious she couldn't sit still. She kept urging Sarah to go to Liam's house just to put on a show and shut people up. Sarah completely ignored the rumors. Packing a simple bag and pocketing her private savings, she hurried to town alone. She walked all the way to the sewing class and met the instructor, Grace Jenkins. Grace was in her 40s, her hands covered with thin calluses from years of needlework, and she treated people with a warm, genuine kindness. Sarah explained her purpose, paid the tuition in full on the spot, registered her name, and confirmed that classes would officially start in 3 days. Having completed all the procedures and stepping out of the shop, a heavy weight was completely lifted from her heart. Walking on the way back, many acquaintances on the street saw her and pointed at her, their murmurs clearly reaching her ears. In the past, she would have definitely felt embarrassed and ashamed, hastily trying to explain herself. But now, she just walked straight ahead without looking sideways. It didn't matter how others gossiped. She didn't need to sacrifice her own life to meet other people's expectations. Returning home, facing her mother's endless nagging, she quietly cleared off an unused wooden table to serve as her future workbench for practicing cutting and sewing. From now on, her time, energy, and savings would all be kept solely for herself. The endless, trivial matters of the neighbor's house and the unpaid nanny job she would never touch them again. Once she mastered the sewing craft, she would be able to stand firmly on her own 2 feet, without relying on anyone, much less bitterly waiting for someone who wouldn't cherish her. 3 days passed in a flash. Punctually carrying her coarse cloth bag, Sarah headed to town for the official start of the sewing class. Inside her bag were the scissors, soft measuring tape, needle, and thread she had prepared in advance, as well as a small scrap of leftover fabric from home. This was the first true step she had taken for herself since her rebirth. With no attachments and no fetters, Her heart was full of grounded expectations. The class wasn't large. It was located in a storefront, facing the town's old street. There were 8 apprentices in total, all young women from the surrounding villages and towns. Her close friend, Emily, was also among them. Emily had a bright, warm-hearted personality and was incredibly grounded and hardworking. The moment they met, Emily took the initiative to sit right next to Sarah and quickly struck up a close familiarity with her. Their instructor, Grace Jenkins, was famous for miles around for her exceptional sewing skills. Her work was meticulous, and her teaching was patient, never holding back secrets or making things difficult for her students. On the very first day of class, she told them plainly that sewing was an honest, practical craft with absolutely no shortcuts. One's eyes had to be sharp, one's hands steady, and one's heart calm. And only by being willing to endure hardships could a person truly learn real skills. Sarah took those words deeply to heart. In her past life, she had wasted her best years catering to Liam's family and waiting for him, ending up with hands that only knew how to do rough housework and lacking any skill to make a living. Eventually, her youth faded, leaving her with absolutely nothing, not even a way to support herself. This time, she treasured the opportunity immensely, working harder than anyone else. While the other girls would slack off and chat when they grew tired, Sarah kept her eyes glued to the instructor's techniques throughout the entire class, carefully memorizing every cutting measurement, every curve of the stitching, and every overlocking technique. Every time the instructor demonstrated a step once, Sarah would practice it over and over again, immediately ripping out the stitches to start over if she made a mistake, refusing to cut corners or deceive herself. Her days in the training class were fulfilling and peaceful, completely shielding her from the village gossip, but the storms at home never truly stopped. Since Sarah stopped going to Liam's house to help and completely broke her old habit of being at their beck and call, Liam's mother gradually began to harbor resentment. In the past, Sarah had come over every single day to fetch water, chop wood, wash clothes, and cook, keeping the household perfectly organized. Suddenly, having no one to serve her, all the tedious chores fell squarely onto her own shoulders, and she simply couldn't adapt to it. Within a few days, Liam's mother personally came to Sarah's house and burst into tears to Martha. "Martha, how did Sarah suddenly change like this? Before Liam left, he reminded her over and over again to help me out, but now I can't even catch a glimpse of her. It's truly too hard for an old woman like me to get by alone at home. I know the child has grown up and has her own thoughts, but a person must have a conscience and keep their promises. Liam is out there enduring hardships in the countryside. Someone has to look after things back home." Every single sentence from Liam's mother played the victim, and every word was a form of moral kidnapping. Martha, who was already biased toward playing matchmaker for Sarah and Liam, grew increasingly anxious upon hearing this. The moment Sarah returned home from class in the evening, Martha dragged her aside for a stern lecture. "Look at you now. Your heart has gone wild ever since you started learning a trade, and you don't care about common decency anymore. Liam's mother actually came to our door herself. You've practically thrown away all your dignity. Make sure you find some time tomorrow to go over and lend a hand, lest people call you ungrateful and heartless." Sarah set down the needle and thread in her hands and countered with a calm expression and clear logic. "Mom, I have never been ungrateful. For several years in the past, I went over to their house every single day to work, doing household chores and heavy labor for free, without ever asking for a single benefit. The affection and loyalty I maintained for so long are more than enough to satisfy any neighborly decency. Liam's mother isn't suffering from any major illness. She is just afraid of exhaustion and hardship. She has a biological sister and a distant nephew, and her relatives are all close by. It shouldn't fall on an outsider like me, who isn't even married into the family, to constantly pick up the slack for her year after year. Liam going to the countryside was his own choice, not a responsibility forced upon him by me. I have no obligation to pay the price for his life." Her words were well-reasoned and perfectly poised, leaving Martha tongue-tied for a moment. Yet, Martha was still unwilling to give up and lowered her voice to persuade her further. "You're just young and impulsive right now, so you don't understand how things work. Liam is a high school graduate. Once his time in the countryside ends and he returns to the city, he is guaranteed a good job assignment. So many girls have their eyes on him. If you offend his mother now, if he comes back and your marriage falls through completely, you won't even have a place to cry. If it falls through, then it falls through," Sarah replied with certainty, without the slightest hesitation. A marriage bought by currying favor and acting as an unpaid servant was never going to last anyway. I have a trade under my belt now. In the future, I can earn my own money and establish myself. I can live a decent life without relying on a man. Martha was so angry with her that she got a headache, but she couldn't say any more harsh words. Looking at Sarah's increasingly resolute demeanor, she finally vaguely realized that Sarah had truly and completely let go of Liam. It wasn't a temporary fit of pique, she had completely severed all thoughts of him. The gossip in the village grew even more turbulent. Countless people talked about her in private, calling her a snob. They said that upon seeing Liam enduring hardships in the countryside and unable to return in the short term, she felt there was no hope in sticking with him, so she immediately turned her back on him and walked away. Others said she was arrogant and haughty, that after learning a little sewing, she thought too highly of herself and looked down on her rural childhood sweetheart. In the past, she would have broken down. She would have tried to explain herself and compromised. But now, after hearing all this, she just laughed it off. She understood human nature too well. In a rural village in 1979, everyone assumed that a woman should depend on a man, enduring silently, sacrificing, and waiting for her final destination. By breaking the established rules, it was only natural that she would be pointed at and judged. However, rumors and gossip couldn't buy her a good life, and compromising to keep the peace would only lead her to repeat the mistakes of her past life. She poured all her energy entirely into learning to sew. During the day, she followed her instructor to refine her skills, learning how to take measurements, cut fabric, and make modern styles like new shirts, bell-bottoms, and floral blouses. At night, she would return home and practice repeatedly on her homemade wooden table, taking apart old clothes to study their patterns and staying up late to practice stitching and overlocking. Watching how hard she worked, Emily often sighed. "Sarah, you're pushing yourself way too hard. We all slack off a bit sometimes, so how can you be so serious every single day?" Sarah would smile and reply, "The skills in your hands belong to you. The more you learn, the more stable your future will be." In just one short month, her skills far surpassed those of her fellow apprentices. Whether it was altering the size of standard garments, overlocking and mending, or creating new clothing styles, she did it all quickly and beautifully. Even instructor Grace Jenkins frequently praised her high aptitude and willingness to endure hardship. Seeing how grounded and capable she was, Grace took the initiative to offer her an opportunity. "Sarah, your skills are almost ready for you to graduate. From now on, if people from the town or villages come to me for work, I can give a portion of it to you. You can earn some money for your own labor." Her heart filled with joy, and she quickly thanked her. This meant she didn't have to wait for the 3-month class to finish. She could start making money with her own skills right now, truly giving her the confidence to make an independent living. She had completely freed herself from her past days of revolving around a man, walking on eggshells, and giving her all for nothing. From then on, her life would be lived only for herself. Ever since Instructor Jenkins was willing to share her private orders with her, Sarah had truly stepped onto the path of earning a living through her craft. At first, it was just simple tasks like shortening pant legs, mending cuffs, and overlocking hems. The jobs were small, and the pay was low, but she did them with exceptional care. For every piece of clothing, she repeatedly checked the measurements. Her stitching was smooth and neat, and the edges were finished cleanly, without the slightest bit of sloppiness. People who had her do work for them were always willing to come back again. Gradually, her reputation began to spread throughout the town and the surrounding villages. Everyone said that despite her young age, her craftsmanship was even more reliable than some of the older tailors. Her prices were fair, and her work was exceptionally detailed. Her classmate Emily, seeing her have work to do and pocket money to earn every single day, was genuinely happy for her from the bottom of her heart. Occasionally, Emily would even help her secure small jobs from her own village, bringing the two of them closer and closer. Compared to the days in the past, when she stayed at home all day, waiting for news, tied down by the trivial chores of the neighbor's house, Sarah now lived a fulfilling and grounded life. She woke up every day, just as the sun was rising, gathered her needles, thread, and fabric, and first caught up on the work that had accumulated overnight at home. Once it was fully light, she would head to the training class to refine new clothing patterns with her instructor. The 1980s marked the beginning of a formal transformation in clothing. The old-fashioned traditional jackets were slowly going out of style. The small lapel shirts, waist-cinching floral skirts, and straight-leg bell-bottoms popular among city dwellers became the most sought-after styles for the young women in town. Instructor Jenkins was open-minded and willing to keep up with the trends. She specially asked someone to bring back the latest sample garments from the county town and led her students in taking them apart to study the designs. While others found the new patterns too difficult and mentally exhausting, unwilling to delve into them, Sarah seized the opportunity and obsessed over the details. The curve of a neckline, the height of a waistline, the width of a pant leg shay, recorded every single detail in her notebook and practiced them repeatedly. In less than 2 months, she was already capable of independently taking on the full production of a complete garment. From measuring and pattern making, to cutting, sewing, and the final overlocking of the hems, she did it all in one smooth, continuous process. What followed was a growing stream of customers. Many young women in the village and town who were getting married, visiting relatives, or going to the market specifically sought her out to make new clothes. The labor for a shirt was 80 cents, a pair of trousers was $1.20, and a floral blouse outfit could earn her over $2. After deducting the occasional cost of supplies like fine thread and buttons, she had a steady income every single day. She neatly organized all the money she earned, not squandering or wasting a single cent, depositing it sum by sum into her small tin box. Her family saw all of this, and their mindset quietly began to change. Martha, who used to nag her every day about being willful, heartless, and not knowing what was good for her, now saw Sarah earning money with her own skills. Seeing that the pocket money in Sarah's hands was even more plentiful than that of the girls who worked formal jobs in the village, Martha's scolding gradually lessened. Occasionally, she would even boast to the neighbors about how capable her daughter was. However, Liam's family still hadn't let her off the hook. Liam's mother would have neighbors pass on messages every few days. Either she would complain that the weeds in her yard were uncleared, or that her water vat wasn't full. She tried every possible way to emotionally blackmail Sarah, hoping to force her to turn back and continue doing their chores. Once, she even deliberately blocked the entrance to Sarah's family home. Feigning grievance, she cried and complained to the passing villagers. "My Liam is out there working so hard, undergoing re-education in the countryside, but his future wife at home doesn't care about a thing. She only cares about earning her own money and having a good time." People's hearts are truly cold these days. When these words reached Sarah's ears, she was pedaling her sewing machine, rushing to finish the lining of a customer's wedding dress. If it had been the past, she would have definitely felt panicked and embarrassed, terrified of being gossiped about behind her back, and she would have taken the initiative to lower her head, curry favor, and make amends. But now, she simply stopped the machine and walked calmly out the door. In front of a crowd of neighbors, she laid out her reasoning clearly and openly. "Ma'am," Sarah addressed Liam's mother, "for 3 years in the past, I went to your house every single day to fetch water, chop wood, wash clothes, and cook. During the holidays, I sewed new clothes and stitched shoe soles for you. I worked year-round without a single day of rest, and I never took a single penny. Your son going to the countryside was in response to the government's policy. It was his own choice, not a debt I owe you. I have never accepted a bride price from your family, nor have we set an engagement. I am under no obligation to toil away for your family for free for the rest of my life. I learned a trade to earn money. Relying on my own 2 hands to make a living is honorable and above board. I have a clear conscience. If others are willing to waste their lives waiting, that is their business. There is absolutely nothing wrong with my refusal to do the same." Her words were magnanimous and sharp, well-reasoned and grounded in fact. They choked Liam's mother so thoroughly that her face cycled through shades of pale and red, unable to utter a single word in rebuttal. The gossip among the watching neighbors instantly reversed. Everyone had watched Sarah grow up. For years, she had served Liam's family without complaint, bearing the burden of hard work, and everyone had seen it with their own eyes. Hearing her words at this moment, everyone finally understood. It wasn't that Sarah was heartless. It was that Liam's family was insatiably greedy. They had grown accustomed to her sacrifices, and the moment they couldn't get what they wanted, they bit back. Someone in the crowd whispered, "So that's what happened. Think about how much this girl helped out before. Anyone would burn out working for free year after year." Another chimed in, "Exactly. The girl is earning her own living now. Why should she be tied to their family for the rest of her life?" Seeing that she couldn't gain the slightest advantage and had instead earned a reputation for being unreasonable and greedy, Liam's mother could only slink away in disgrace. From then on, she never dared to blatantly block their door and cry again. Having resolved the entanglement with the neighbor's family, Sarah finally found complete peace. She threw herself entirely into her craft and her livelihood. As her customer base grew, she began to manage her time efficiently. During the day, she learned new techniques at the training class and took on large clothing orders in town. At night, she rushed to finish the smaller, odd jobs for the villagers at home. She was reliable in her work, never delaying the deadlines she promised her customers, and the quality of her craftsmanship was always consistently high. More and more customers started returning. In just 2 short months, she had accumulated over $30 in savings. In 1979, this sum far exceeded half a year's pocket money for an ordinary farming household, giving her plenty of confidence to stand firmly on her own 2 feet. She was no longer that lowly girl who depended on others, walked on eggshells, and revolved around a man. She had a trade, savings, a good reputation, and a steady confidence that belonged solely to her. Emily often told her with envy, "Sarah, you are truly different now. Your whole being radiates a crisp confidence. You are living so much more wonderfully than before. If only I could be like you, daring to fight and venture out." Sarah smiled and replied, "You have to pave your own path. Instead of waiting for someone else to give you a destination, it's better to earn your own foundation." As the days moved forward steadily and peacefully, she completely severed her past obsessions and escaped the fate trap of her previous life. She knew very well that before long, Liam would send a letter back from the countryside. He would pretend to care about her well-being, but in reality, he would just be trying to manipulate her continued sacrifices and consume her youth. But in this lifetime, she had already laid down the stepping stones for her own life layer by layer, and she would never give him even half a chance again. After completely shaking off the neighbor's entanglement, her life thoroughly turned a brand new page. She was no longer bound by trivial social obligations. Her daily life was simple and fulfilling. Aside from refining her sewing skills and taking on clothing orders, all her remaining time was spent with Emily and the others, slowly building up a brand new social circle of her own. In the past, her life had consisted only of Liam and his family's chores. Her friends, her time, and her emotions had all revolved around him, causing the girls her age to gradually distance themselves from her. Now that she had broken out of those shackles, she finally realized just how relaxing it was to live without having to wait humbly and sacrifice herself for free. The apprentices in the training class were all genuine and grounded, completely free from the gossip and scheming found among neighbors. During the day, they followed instructor Grace Jenkins together to delve into new cutting techniques, helping each other check measurements and alter clothing patterns. After finishing work in the evening, they would go to the market together, stroll around the public co-op, and share their lives and thoughts. Emily had completely become her best friend. She had a lively and clear-headed personality, and she understood Sarah the most. She never pried into her past with Liam, nor did she ever urge her to turn back and compromise. She just silently accompanied her to focus on her craft and live a good life. "Sarah, your skills right now are steadier than several of the old tailors in town," Emily said one evening after they finished work. "In a little while, you can totally take on orders and work independently. You won't need to rely on the training class at all." They sat at the door of the shop sorting fabric. Emily, while tidying up loose threads, sighed with genuine emotion. Sarah nodded, having already made plans in her heart. She planned to set up a permanent stall right outside her door after finishing the class, specializing in making and altering clothes, taking on long-term work. After more than 2 months of honing, her skills were completely mature. She could perfectly handle standard men's and women's clothing, children's wear, and new wedding garments. Even many picky returning customers specifically asked for her to do their work. Instructor Grace Jenkins had also praised her more than once, saying she was meticulous, highly perceptive, and had the perfect makings to make a living from her craft. As her social circle became clean and positive, her mindset also grew increasingly relaxed and steady. She no longer worried about gains and losses, nor did she suffer from internal turmoil and anxiety. Her overall energy and spirit visibly improved. She dressed neatly and sharply, and handled things crisply and decisively. She was like a completely different person from the submissive girl who used to revolve around others. But just as a tree desires stillness, yet the wind will not cease, the gossip in the village never completely stopped. There were still a few traditional, middle-aged and elderly women who had nothing to do all day, gathering to gossip and stubbornly clinging to the matter between her and Liam. They argued under the big locust tree at the village entrance, saying she was cold-hearted and calculating, that as soon as Liam went to the countryside to suffer, she turned her back and cut teeth, a typical case of burning bridges. Others said that after learning a little trade, it went to her head that she had become arrogant and looked down on her honest childhood sweetheart, and that she would regret it sooner or later. These petty and piercing rumors drifted into her home with the wind, reaching her parents' ears. Martha would occasionally still be influenced by the gossip. Feeling unsettled, she would talk to Sarah privately at night. "Mom knows you have skills and can earn money now," Martha said. "But as the old saying goes, always leave some leeway in how you treat people. You've spoken too harshly and acted too unforgivingly now. If Liam comes back to visit his family at the end of the year, it will be too awkward when our two families meet." Sarah, while pedaling her sewing machine to sew a piece of children's clothing, replied faintly, her tone calm and firm. "I did leave leeway, Mom. It's them who were insatiably greedy. I sacrificed for free for years, and no one appreciated my goodness. The moment I pull back slightly to protect myself, everyone criticizes me. Rather than wronging myself just to get a good word from others, it's better to just live my own life well. He went to the countryside for his own future, not for me. I have no need to use my youth to pay for his prospects." Her words were clear and rational. Martha remained silent for a long time and never again tried to persuade her to turn back. During this time, Martha had seen with her own eyes how Sarah woke up early and stayed up late, steadily earning money. Witnessing her independent and confident demeanor, she had already slowly come to understand her daughter's choice. Compared to an illusory marriage promise and the gossip of others, tangible skills and savings were a daughter's most reliable foundation. Not long after, a letter from afar arrived in the village. It was a letter Liam sent back from the countryside. When the letter was delivered to her house, the village clerk brought it personally. The neighbors instantly formed a circle around them, all waiting to see if she would soften her heart and go back to waiting for him. The clerk handed her the letter, teasing with a smile. "Liam misses you, Sarah. He wrote this letter especially for you. Hurry up and see what he says." Pinching the thin letter paper between her fingertips, Sarah felt absolutely no waves in her heart. She was too familiar with Liam's way of doing things. This letter was nothing more than his usual routine. A few perfunctory words of missing her, a few sentences about the hardships in the countryside, followed by a convenient request for her to continue looking after his mother and managing his household affairs, while painting a picture of an illusory return date, to continue firmly manipulating her sacrifices. In her past life, upon receiving the letter, she had been ecstatic. She had stayed up all night writing a reply, every word gentle and tender, looking forward to his return day after day. But in this life, she didn't even have the desire to open it. In front of the crowd of watching neighbors, she handed the letter directly back to the clerk. "Please return this for me. I don't need it." The entire place instantly fell silent. Everyone was stunned. No one expected her to be so absolute, not even sparing a single glance at Liam's letter. The clerk looked utterly bewildered. This is a letter Liam wrote specifically for you. It wouldn't be right to return it, would it? We have nothing to do with each other anymore." "There's no need to exchange letters," Sarah said, her tone open and magnanimous, unafraid of anyone's gaze. "His family affairs and his return date have nothing to do with me. From now on, there's no need to deliver his letters to my house." After saying that, she turned and went back inside, continuing to pedal her sewing machine, completely shutting out all the shock, gossip, and sighs behind her. The chatter outside exploded once again. Only this time, no one dared to call her heartless or willful. Everyone saw clearly that she wasn't just throwing a temporary fit of pique. She had truly and thoroughly let go of the obsession that had bound her for years. She was no longer anyone's appendage, no longer anyone's nanny, and no longer anyone's backup plan. She was just Saraha girl who earned money with her own two hands and lived for herself. In the days to come, her social circle, her income, and her life would all be completely under her own control. The news of her refusing the letter spread throughout the whole village, completely overturning everyone's preconceived notions about her. Before this, many people were certain that she was just acting out of momentary emotion, and that as soon as Liam's letter arrived, a few soft words of coaxing would definitely soften her heart, making her turn back to obediently wait for him and look after his family. But her act of returning the letter in public was crisp and clean, leaving no room for doubt, and it directly shattered everyone's speculations. The gossip mill under the big locust tree at the village entrance completely changed its tune. That group of middle-aged women who used to call her a heartless snob who didn't know how to be grateful never dared to casually badmouth her again. The few who still wanted to say a word or two would be immediately rebuffed by others the moment they opened their mouths. Sarah did everything humanly possible, serving Liam's family for 3 years. No one else could have gone that far. Besides, she has a trade now, can earn money, and is living a thriving life. Why should she continue wasting away waiting for a man, they would say. Liam just moves his lips and paints empty promises, throwing all the big and small matters at home onto the girl. No one would wait for that. The rumors had completely reversed. No one criticized her anymore. Instead, everyone felt she was clear-headed, sharp, and had backbone. At first, Martha was worried that her act of returning the letter was too unfeeling and would completely offend the neighbors. But seeing the village's public opinion completely turn around, and watching Sarah steadily earn money every day, Martha's mindset became increasingly steady, and those little worries in her heart completely dissipated. She finally fully understood that Sarah wasn't making a fuss. She had truly broken out of the shackles placed on her by others, and was living life on her own terms. However, Liam's family still hadn't given up. When Liam's mother found out that Sarah had returned the letter, she panicked completely. She had always relied on the title of Sarah being Liam's fiancé, who would serve their family year-round to laze her days away. Ever since Sarah stopped coming over, all the farm work and chores fell entirely on her shoulders, making her days exhausting and miserable. Unwilling to lose her free labor just like that, the very next day, she dragged her sister over to Sarah's house to mediate, hoping to play the sympathy card and soften Sarah's heart. Aunt Mary, Liam's aunt, showed up at the door with a bag of homemade dried sweet potatoes. Smiling gently, every word out of her mouth was an attempt at moral kidnapping. "Sarah, you and Liam grew up together. With all the affection between you two, how can you just break it off like this? It's normal for young people to throw little temper tantrums, but don't take it so seriously. Liam is suffering and working hard out in the countryside, and the person he misses the most in his heart is you. He specifically wrote a letter because he cares about you. Returning it like that breaks his heart. Listen to my advice. Keep helping out his family as usual. When he comes back at the end of the year, you two can get married properly, and your life will get more and more stable." Sarah brought out 2 glasses of plain water. Her attitude was polite, but her stance was rock solid, leaving not a single inch of room for compromise. "Aunt Mary, affection is mutual. It's not supposed to be a one-sided sacrifice. In the past, I did my absolute best to help his family for 3 years, without a single complaint. Whatever affection I owed has long been repaid. It's true that he is working hard in the countryside, but that is no reason for me to sacrifice my time for free. I need to focus on my craft and making a living right now. I don't have the extra time or energy to help another family with their chores." Her tone was completely calm, and every single word was grounded in reason and logic. She didn't start a screaming match, but she completely killed off any possibility of negotiation. Aunt Mary's hand, still holding the bag of dried sweet potatoes, froze in midair. Her several attempts to persuade were all calmly rejected by Sarah. In the end, she had no choice but to leave in a huff, having failed to gain the slightest advantage. After having their attempts thoroughly rejected twice in a row, Liam's family finally recognized reality. Sarah truly wasn't going to turn back and serve them ever again. From then on, Liam's family quieted down completely. They never dared to send anyone to their door to persuade or emotionally blackmail her again. They had no choice but to honestly manage their own household chores and work the fields themselves. Without Sarah constantly picking up the slack year-round, Liam's mother was exhausted every single day. She grew noticeably haggard and completely lost her former leisurely, carefree appearance. Having resolved the last bit of social entanglement, Sarah devoted herself wholeheartedly to her sewing business. More than half a year had passed since her rebirth and her refusal to wait for Liam. Her skills had become increasingly exquisite. Not only could she make standard everyday clothes, but she was also highly skilled at tailoring red wedding jackets, modern suits, and new children's clothing. Because her workmanship was incredibly fine and her patterns looked beautiful, people from villages miles around specifically came to her to have their clothes made. Seeing that Sarah had a stable customer base and mature skills, instructor Grace Jenkins took the initiative to suggest that she graduate early and take orders independently. "Sarah, your current level has long surpassed that of an ordinary apprentice," Grace told her. "Staying in the training class is just a waste of time for you now. If you set up your own stall and take orders independently, you'll earn much more than you do here. Whenever I get large customer orders on my end, I'll still share them with you, so you won't miss out." Sarah agreed immediately and solemnly thanked her instructor. Graduating early meant she truly possessed the qualifications to make an independent living. After returning home, she had a brief discussion with her parents and prepared to set up her own dedicated sewing stall right outside their front door. Seeing her grounded and hardworking demeanor, Robert supported her fully. He specifically took time out to build her a smooth, flat wooden cutting table and even custom-made a wooden rack for hanging fabrics. In just one short day, her simple sewing stall officially took shape. There were no fancy decorations, just a wooden table, a sewing machine, a few rolls of fabric, and various colors of thread and buttons. It was incredibly simple, but it was the greatest foundation of confidence she had ever had in this life. On the first day she opened her stall, a continuous stream of old and new customers flooded in. Her orders immediately filled up an entire week's schedule. Sarah was trustworthy in her work, her prices were fair, her workmanship was exquisite, and she never cut corners or delayed her deadlines. Whether it was a small repair for a few cents or a complete custom outfit for several dollars, Sarah treated them with the same level of dedication. In just a few short days, the reputation of her small stall was firmly established. Her daily income was steady, and her savings grew visibly at an incredible rate. She was no longer that cowardly girl who lived with her hand out, walking on eggshells and depending on others. She earned money with her own 2 hands, spent her own savings, and lived her own life, living openly and freely. Emily often came over to help her watch the stall and package clothes. Seeing the endless stream of customers, she was genuinely happy for her. "Sarah, you're truly amazing now. Running your own business and making money is so much more stable than rushing into marriage." Sarah smiled and nodded, her heart full of gratitude. She was thankful for her rebirth, which allowed her to cut her losses in time and escape the trap of endless waiting and unpaid sacrifices. At this exact time in her past life, she had still been guarding Liam's empty house day in and day out, toiling away and waiting bitterly, exhausting herself physically and mentally, only to end up with absolutely nothing. But in this lifetime, she had taken control of her own destiny. With a trade in her hands, money in her pocket, her parents supporting her, and a best friend by her side, her life was thriving and getting better with each passing day. She clearly remembered that in just a few short days, Liam, having completed a full year in the countryside, would apply for family visitation leave to return home. In her past life, when he had returned, she had worn washed-out old clothes, looking haggard and exhausted as she ran joyfully to meet him only to be met with his indifference and growing distance. But in this lifetime, everything was different. When he returned and saw the completely transformed, dazzlingly independent Sarah, when he saw the stable life she had built with her own two hands and realized she no longer revolved around him, he was destined to be stunned and filled with regret as he ended up with nothing. Her new life had already officially begun, while his regret was only just starting. Time flew by. A whole year, exactly 365 days had passed since Liam left for the countryside and told her to wait for him at the train station. Over the course of this year, Sarah had completely rewritten her life's trajectory. There was no more waiting, no more emotional turmoil, and no more unpaid labor for the neighbors. All her time and energy were dedicated to putting down roots, growing, and earning money. The sewing stall right outside her door had long since gotten on the right track. From initially taking on small, scattered mending jobs, it had grown into the most reliable custom clothing stall in the surrounding villages and towns. She had thoroughly mastered all the popular clothing patterns of the 1970s and 80s sex. Whether it was waist-cinching floral blouses, crisp small lapel shirts, perfectly draped bell-bottoms, or festive wedding suits, she made them all quickly and exquisitely. Many people from neighboring towns and villages specifically went out of their way to seek her out for custom clothes. Her schedule was often fully booked half a month in advance. She organized her daily schedule reasonably, refusing to stay up late and overtax her body, but also never cutting corners with her customers. Her business was so stable it made others envious, and her accumulated savings provided her with rock-solid confidence. After deducting her daily living expenses and the cost of restocking fabrics and supplies, her small tin money box held over $180 in neatly stacked cash. In the rural countryside of 1,980, this was an astronomical sum. An ordinary farming household working the fields year-round wouldn't even be able to save $50. Relying solely on her craft, in just 1 year she had earned what would take others 3 or 4 years to save. With her pockets full, Sarah's mindset and appearance also underwent a complete transformation. In the past, from doing heavy labor year-round and living frugally, her complexion had been sallow, her hands and feet rough, and she always wore washed-out old clothes. She used to be timid and cowering, completely unnoticeable in a crowd. Now, free from worries about food and clothing, she was willing to spend money on eating well and dressing nicely. All her spare time was used for resting and improving herself. Her skin became fair and smooth, and her features relaxed into a confident glow. She made herself a well-fitted, modern floral blouse and sharp, dark, straight-leg pants. Her hair was combed neatly. Standing in front of her own stall, she was poised, elegant, and full of vibrant energy. Everyone in the village saw this change. No one dared to call her willful, heartless, or ignorant anymore. Those who had once mocked her for giving up on her childhood sweetheart and ruining her own future now completely changed their tune, praising her for being capable, having good foresight, and being independent. Her parents now stood tall too. In the past, Martha would always worry about people gossiping about Sarah when she went out, acting and speaking cautiously. Now, she smiled at everyone she met, full of pride when talking about her daughter, no longer needing to fret over Sarah's marriage or her future. Her father, Robert, fully approved of her choice even more, often helping her watch the stall and organize fabrics, throwing his full support behind her business. Her best friend, Emily, also came over often to lend a hand. Watching Sarah's transformation, she frequently sighed with deep emotion. "Sarah, I truly admire you now," Emily said. "In just 1 year, you've lived your way into becoming the most glamorous girl in our village. Look at the others clinging to men, clinging to engagements, only to end up with a messy, chaotic life." Pedaling her sewing machine to make a new women's dress, Sarah smiled faintly. Relying on others is never as good as relying on yourself. Having money and skills in your own hands is more stable than anything else. This past year, she had completely severed all the humbleness and regrets of her past life. At this exact time in her previous life, she had endured for a whole year, going to the neighbor's house every day to work, scrounging and saving to subsidize his family. She had been exhausted and haggard, her heart and eyes entirely focused on waiting for Liam's return, only to be met with utter disappointment in the end. In this life, she had let herself off the hook and truly been reborn. The days for Liam's family, however, were the exact opposite, turning into a messy, miserable state. Without Sarah's year-round, non-stop help, Liam's mother had no one to rely on. Fetching water, chopping wood, weeding the fields, doing laundry, and cooking, she had to shoulder all the chores herself. She was already frail and afraid of hard work, having grown used to slacking off and taking it easy year-round. After a year of physical labor, she had aged considerably and looked haggard, her spirit completely broken. The family's courtyard was overgrown and neglected, the stove dirty and messy. It no longer had its former clean and tidy appearance. Neighbors passing by would sigh, noting that without Sarah's help, Liam's family had completely lost their former decency. During this year, Liam had sent 3 letters back from the countryside intermittently, all of which Sarah had returned. She hadn't written back a single letter, nor did she feel the slightest bit of lingering attachment. She had completely erased every trace related to him. She knew very well that the policies for sent-down youths visiting relatives had been relaxed this year. Youths who had been in the countryside for a full year could return home to visit. Liam was coming back soon. At this moment, he surely still carried a strong sense of superiority, certain that she was still waiting in the exact same spot, having waited bitterly for him for a year, toiling day after day, anxiously looking forward to him returning to marry her. He surely thought that everyone in the village would be waiting to watch their reunion. He surely thought she would put down all her pride, revolve around him again, serve him, and accommodate him. But he could never dream that over this past year, she had already shed all her submissiveness and completely transformed her life. She was no longer the Sarah who revolved around him and sacrificed for him for free. She had a trade, savings, a career, and the confidence to live a glamorous, independent, and free life. The sent-down youth status he was so proud of, and his future career prospects could no longer catch her eye. She stopped the work in her hands and raised her eyes to look toward the main road at the village entrance, her heart completely calm. For a year of waiting, she hadn't given him a shred of tenderness or sacrifice. She had only given herself a reborn, completely transformed new life. His impending return was not her happy ending, but his regret. The early afternoon sun was warm, but not scorching. Sarah was sitting in front of her stall, overlocking the hem of a customer's garment, the clatter of the sewing machine steady and rhythmic. The village was particularly lively today. Everyone was discussing one thing. The sent-down youths were returning home in batches to visit their families, and Liam was returning to the village today. Many neighbors had gathered early at the village entrance to watch the excitement, mostly waiting to see the scene of her and him reuniting after a year apart. In everyone's ingrained perception, no matter how much awkwardness had occurred between them, or how many letters she had returned, she was ultimately Liam's default fiancée. Once he returned, all the awkwardness would be turned over like a new page. Martha, sitting beside her picking vegetables, couldn't help but mutter in a low voice, "Liam is arriving home today. He'll definitely come over when he passes by later. Make sure you talk nicely to him. Don't give him a cold face anymore. Always leave some leeway in everything." Sarah's fingertips didn't stop, the stitching smooth and crisp, her tone indifferent. There's nothing much to say. Everyone walks their own path and lives their own life. She knew Liam's mind too well. He would inevitably return, this time carrying a strong sense of superiority. His status as a sent-down youth, with the hope of returning to the city and being assigned a formal job, was enough for him to swagger through the countryside. He firmly believed in his heart that she must have suffered bitterly this year, looking forward to his return every day. As long as he offered a few soft and gentle words, she would immediately turn back, continuing to be that hard-working, obedient, and sensible fiancé. Not only that, but he would highly likely continue to order her around as a matter of course, making her take back all his family's chores and continue to act as a safety net for his mother, all while waiting for him to gloriously return to the city in the future and conveniently accept her sacrifices. The Liam in her past life was exactly this selfish and arrogant. Not long after, a commotion of excitement came from the village entrance, and the crowd's chatter suddenly grew louder. From the corner of her eye, Sarah caught a glimpse of a tall, straight figure walking right down the middle of the village road. Dressed in a clean, light blue work uniform and carrying a canvas backpack, his figure was more upright and mature than a year ago. His features were still handsome. It was none other than Liam, returning for his family visit. As he walked, he accepted the greetings and praises of the neighbors, a calm and gentle smile hanging on his face, looking for all the world like someone with a bright future and an extraordinary demeanor. The neighbors playfully called out to him. "Liam is back! This stint of toughening up in the countryside has made you look even more energetic. Truly an educated man, the aura is just different. Hurry up and go see your Sarah, she's been waiting for you for a year, finally looking forward to having you back." These words greatly satisfied Liam's vanity. The smile on his lips deepened, and his eyes carried a determined certainty of inevitable success as he walked straight toward her direction. The onlookers surrounding them instantly quieted down. Everyone's eyes fell in unison upon her and him, waiting to see their old flame rekindle and for them to reconcile as before. Liam walked closer, step by step. The moment Liam's gaze fell on Sarah, his footsteps came to a sudden halt. All the calm and gentle composure on his face instantly vanished. He froze, completely stunned. The Sarah in his memory was that little girl wearing old clothes, sallow-faced and submissive, always following behind him, carefully watching his expressions. She was the girl who toiled for his family every day, lived frugally, and waited for him humbly, with her heart and eyes full of only him. But the Sarah standing before his eyes was like a completely different person. She was wearing a clean, crisp, modern floral blouse. The cuffs were smooth, the waist fit perfectly. It was the most fashionable style of the time. Her long hair was neatly tied up, her features relaxed and bright, her skin fair and clean. She sat there with a calm and poised posture, pedaling the sewing machine with steady, practiced movements. She radiated an aura of independence, confidence, stability, and dazzling brightness. In front of her small stall, the fabrics were neatly arranged, and orders were piled up. Passers-by constantly stopped to ask about the prices of her clothes. Every move she made was filled with quiet confidence. There was not a trace of her former humbleness or timidity. Liam's pupils shrank slightly, his face full of disbelief. He had imagined their reunion scene countless times. He thought she would look at him with red eyes, or perhaps show a bit of petty awkwardness or silent grievance. The only thing he hadn't imagined was that she would be doing so well that she didn't need him at all. The hardship of a year's grinding in the countryside and his perceived career advantages instantly lost all their sense of superiority. His Adam's apple bobbed slightly, and it took him several seconds to find his voice. His tone carried a barely detectable hint of probing and bewilderment. "Sarah." Sarah stopped the machine. She raised her eyes and gave him a faint glance. It was calm and distant. There was no joy, no ripple of emotion, no flutter of a long-awaited reunion, not even a single trace of extra emotion. "Can I help you?" These few cold, polite words completely opened up a massive distance between them. Liam's chest felt a dull ache, stung by her distant tone. In the past, when she looked at him, her eyes were filled with passionate, starry light. Now, there was only a cool indifference left, entirely empty. He forced down the bewilderment in his heart and habitually put on his old posture, carrying a somewhat entitled gentleness. "I'm back. I just got home." "You returned all the letters from before? What's going on? We haven't contacted each other for a year. Are you really that heartless?" It was still that condescending tone, faintly carrying an accusation, as if her not waiting and not sacrificing was some massive, unforgivable sin. Sarah gently set down the fabric. Neither humble nor arrogant, she looked him straight in the eye. "I have no obligation to wait for you forever, much less an obligation to hold up your household for you. This past year, I've lived my own life well, and I have a clear conscience." Liam's brows furrowed tightly. Looking at the Sarah in front of him who had completely slipped out of his control, a strong sense of panic rose in his heart for the very first time. His gaze swept over her small stall filled with fabric, swept over her clean and respectable clothes, and swept over her calm, confident demeanor. Then, remembering his own messy, desolate, and dilapidated courtyard, and remembering his mother, who was exhausted and haggard every day, a massive sense of disparity smashed ruthlessly into his heart. He had suffered and endured hardship in the countryside, carefully accumulating qualifications, thinking that upon his return he could control everything with infinite glory. But looking back, he only just realized that the girl he had casually entrusted his household affairs to, the one he had haphazardly consumed, had already quietly turned her life around and lived her way into someone far beyond his reach. He tried to salvage the situation. His tone unconsciously softened, carrying a bit of charity-like tolerance. "I know you felt wronged when I left last year. I came back this time planning to properly spend time with you. Let bygones be bygones," Liam said. "You continue to help out around the house, and once I return to the city permanently and settle down, we'll get engaged." These words were still a condescending charity. He still wanted her to repeat the same mistakes, to continue being his free nanny, his backup plan, and his safety net. Hearing this, Sarah just faintly curled her lips. Her smile was cold, entirely devoid of warmth. There's no need for that, Liam. I've already repaid all the affection from the past. You have your prospects, and I have my life. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other. You don't need to entrust anything to me ever again, and I won't waste another second of my time on you. Every word was crisp and clean, completely severing all their ties. The watching neighbors were in an absolute uproar. They finally understood that she had truly and completely let go, leaving not even a sliver of room to turn back. Liam's face instantly turned deathly pale. The certainty, superiority, and composure in his eyes completely collapsed, leaving only disbelief, bewilderment, and a sudden, overwhelming wave of regret. He stood rooted to the spot, looking at the calm, dazzling, and fiercely independent Sarah. He watched her thriving, radiant life that was growing brighter with every step. He finally realized clearly that her perfunctory nod at the train station a year ago wasn't a compromise to wait. It was a final, complete farewell. He had lost the girl whose heart had been completely filled with him, who had sacrificed for him for free for years, and he had personally thrown away everything that once offered him stability. As for Sarah, her new life was blossoming like a vibrant tapestry, her future full of endless promise, and it no longer had anything to do with him.
The best revenge is success. Sarah proves that true security comes from your own skills and financial independence, not someone else's. Know your worth. What do you think of her choice? Like, comment, and subscribe.